Okay, it's 11 o'clock. I'd like to call the June meeting of the Board of Aldermen, Town North Topsail Beach to order. I'm Mike Benson, Mayor Pro Tem, filling in for Mayor Joanne McDermott, who is on leave this week, and we'll be back tomorrow. So, being a novice at this, I'm going to, from time to time, ask the town manager for guidance. But let's begin with the invocation, please. Alderman Hart.
Bless this town and may it remain a beautiful and friendly place to live. We pray that this board makes fair and informed decisions tonight or today. We also pray that our police officers, firefighters, and members of our armed services here and around the world remain safe as they risk so much for our security. We also pray that our town be spared the ravages of hurricanes and other natural disasters, and that everyone associated with the town remains safe and secure. Amen.
Before we do the pledge of allegiance, I'm going to ask Chief Youngier to come forward, if you would, Chief, and lead us in the pledge of allegiance.
Thank you much. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Chief. Our next item is the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda? Okay. We need a motion to amend the agenda. I'll explain the motion. Maybe I should make the motion. I can make the motion. Okay. I'll move that we add under continuing business a motion to approve the sale of town property on Folkestone Road that we have been trying to sell for many, many years. We have a bid on that property now.
A second.
Okay.
All in favor?
All in favor?
I'm sorry, you want discussion first? It's just an
Discussion
agenda.
of that agenda item.
Just add it. It's just to add it, not to decide it. Yep.
Right, we're not deciding, just adding. Okay. All in favor of approving the amended agenda?
Aye.
Say aye. Those opposed, same side. Okay. We're ready for Manager Durian's manager's report.
Okay, thank you. Update first on the beach projects. Phase 5, ST Wooten completed the first phase of this project. The final volume placed for this phase of the project was 120,051 cubic yards of sand. The project will be paused until November following sea turtle season, and then we will again resume with the project. Cat B Dune Restoration Project. Work officially resumed on Monday, May 2nd as scheduled, and was completed on May 9th. This was the truck haul project in the area of St. Regis to north of the pier. The contractor placed approximately 8,100 cubic yards of sand with this project. We did exceed the original scope amount of 7,300 cubic yards. Mr. Way reported that there's typically a higher tolerance for very small unit placements such as this. I have discussed specifically the Goldsboro Lane area with Mr. Way and asked between now and November go back and see if that area needs revisited in November. The County Dune Project, Beach Access 4. I work daily on trying to facilitate, as most of you know, the completion of the 2,200 cubic yards of sand that was to be placed to finish Beach Access 4. There was a lot of back and forth between us, the county, and the state regarding permitting and getting approval for that. Last week, due to another email received from the state, they indicated that the town would not have any relief from liability under the provisions of the Endangered Species Act. And at that point in time, we just spent too much time going back and forth. We were losing time to guarantee the contractor would be able to complete early in the week as opposed to showing up on Thursday and Friday going into Memorial Day, which would have been very problematic. So I emailed the county manager and requested that the funds be rolled over into next fiscal year so we can complete the project in November. She has instructed their finance director to roll those funds over. So they will be available to us to seek reimbursement following that project in November. Sea oats planning, Coastal Transplants continues to work on sea oats planning. They started work where they left off near Beach Access 4, started working south. They were scheduled to be near St. Moritz going south last week through Memorial Day. This week they're planning on starting the northern limits of the project of Beach Access 4 and will continue in that direction until approximately June 23rd or June 24th. Again, these dates are all tentative. Of course, there could be rain delays and other things that come up that would delay the project, but this is a tentative schedule for the remainder of the project. June 24th, they'll flip back south, starting approximately 3,000 feet south of the St. Moritz and moving approximately 6,000 feet. July 6th through mid-August, they'll be starting approximately 9,000 feet from St. Moritz and finishing at the Surf City town line. Updated EIS, the mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and I met with Mickey Sugg of Army Corps of Engineers and requested an updated timeline, which I had shared to all the board members a week ago. Right now they are on task number 6, which indicates they are working to prepare the draft EIS and public scoping report. This is scheduled to be completed July 31st. From there they will prepare the biological assessment and essential fish habitat assessment, which will take place in around October timeframe. The 22-23 budget, our budget workshops were held as scheduled and advertised on March 30th, April 13th, May 23rd, and then we had the budget hearing on May 23rd as scheduled as well following the workshop. The budget is available at our office for public inspection. We have a meeting scheduled on June 8th, which has been published at 1:00 p.m. here at Town Hall to adopt the fiscal year 22-23 budget. Holiday weekend. Staff met a couple weeks ago in preparation for Memorial Day and schedule as necessary for the expected influx of visitors, which we certainly have seen. We deployed the town's VMS board at the Port of the Bridge that basically advised visitors to follow such rules as stay off the dunes, no glass on the beach, leash your dogs, so forth. Police, as well as 2 beach patrol individuals, patrolled the beach throughout the weekend. Police reported 41 glass bottle violations, 26 dog violations, and 3 dune violations. Code enforcement also did a sweep in the overnight hours looking for personal property items that would need to be removed and did not find, luckily did not find much of anything to report, which was good. So hopefully with the increase of education beforehand, it helped with that process. The fire department also was extremely busy over the weekend with higher than expected call volumes. They had 18 on Sunday, they reported. There was also some citations issued, a few of them at the 4x4 lot over the weekend as well.
Does anyone have questions for the town manager? Alderman Grant?
Comment and then a question. I think she answered my question, but I'll make sure at the end. One is I wanted to thank you for the work on the county lot, and also thank the county for being willing to roll that over. With all their budget issues, allowing us to roll that forward says a lot for our relationship, how it's improved with them, that you're able to work that out with the county manager so we don't lose those funds and we can get forward. Second thing is, if you would talk to your team to find out if there's anything that we can do on our side of the road across from them temporarily in case we have high tides or whatever, because now we're talking about November before we'll be able to fix that, right? And then the other thing I was going to ask you on the citations is there was a number of complaints about people taking the 4-wheel drives past the signage. I mean, if somebody's standing next to their truck, obviously we're not telling them we're not towing them. What is our protocol for that? Is it to fine them? Is it to tell them to move? Is it all the above? Just a question for you.
Well, it certainly depends, but the protocol is there's 2 large signs out there that tell people, and once they get beyond that certain point, then the police department they're poised to issue citations at that point because they've been made aware of it. But
and they make them move then if the police are out there? Okay. The only comment I had is I saw a lot of concerns on that. My own feeling was, with the holiday weekend being what it was and watching fire and police trucks constantly going back and forth on the island, I think, our highest priority has got to be public safety, and my guess is we had a lot of calls on that stuff more than anything else. So I'm not saying it's not a priority to do it, but I think in terms of just the number of vehicles that I saw, fire and police vehicles, going back and forth, thanks for being out there, because I know there must have been a lot of calls. And I guess, was there a lost child for a while? And they found the child, so that's great as well. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
I just want to add,
Turn your microphone.
Alice, the town manager understated her efforts to try to get the county project. It was extremely frustrating. It was a moving target. And in my opinion, she should be commended for zealously trying to get that done on time.
I do have one question. I will second the attorney's comments, because I know firsthand how difficult it was for you. Will the budget, the documents are available in town clerk's office or in town hall for citizens to review?
Yes.
Can citizens still make public comments in writing, either by email or in written comments?
Sure.
To you until the June 8th meeting?
Yes.
So if you're interested in what the budget looks like, citizens, you still have an opportunity to make your comments known to the town, either by email to the town manager or by coming by with a handwritten or written document. Okay. Let's,
One more thing of note, you'll see in the back, there's a free little library that the Kiwanis, we've been working with them. They have graciously donated. That will be installed at Richard Peters Park soon, within the next week or so. So just thank you to them. We appreciate all of their support.
yeah, we hope to have a little ceremony when that's installed. Some of the Kiwanis members will be there, hopefully including Alderman Grant, myself, plus some of the Kiwanis officers from the Kiwanis Club of Topsail Island area to officially install that little library box. It is really a cute thing.
Alice, I wanted to find out, is it any update on the concert?
I
The
have
bands
talked to the promoter. I'm waiting for them to get back to me on an April date. They did say at this point, based on the timing, that it would be probably in everyone's best interest to postpone that date until April. But they're going to get back to me with a firm date, and then I'll get back to the board and let you all know. But they were going to try to focus on, because it's not just only one band, it's a total of 3 bands that would be under that contract. And they were going to try to get one that has a local presence, Band of Oz.
Right.
So they were trying to vet that schedule with that one particular band to see if they can make that happen in April.
I wasn't aware of that, about the three bands.
Yeah.
So it's
Okay. Any other questions? All right, our next item on the agenda is the planning board committee report. Is that going to be Chair McLeod or Planning Director Hill?
Planning
Who's
Director
coming?
Hill.
Okay. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I think. All right. Do you want me to go through the all the items or just hit the pool? I'm sorry, which? Highlights. Okay. We were absolutely delighted to have Tracy Scrable, who is a coastal scientist, do a presentation for the planning board on May the 12th. We discussed the outdoor swimming pools, and as directed by the Board of Aldermen on their April 6th meeting, who had requested a review of CAMA standards, including recommendations for the town adopting higher standards than CAMA. and also a survey of the area beach towns to see if they were consistent with or higher than Division of Coastal Management. And as directed by the planning board, I contacted, it was a little more than 6 of the towns. Pine Knoll Shores, of course, is more restricted than Kama and does not allow pools to be placed in the ocean erodible setback. Wrightsville Beach is consistent, Emerald Isle is consistent, Atlantic Beach is consistent, Sunset Beach is consistent, Bald Head Island is consistent. Surf City is generally consistent, except that they have a clarification in that in no case shall a swimming pool be placed seaward of the toe of the primary or frontal dune. And Topsail Beach is more restrictive, and there's a number of items that have been included in the planning board committee report. And my recommendation to the planning board was to add an amendment to our ordinance in section 4.0309 for outdoor swimming pools, that it's consistent with camera regs unless otherwise prohibited below. And then paragraph B is the prohibitions, and to include that the pool is no higher than 18 inches above natural grade, and that facilitates concrete deck or deck at grade. In paragraph F, all pool, spa, or hot tub applications require V-Zone certification by a design professional. That proposed development does not alter sand dunes, and I'd like to strike out or mangrove stands, as coastal scientist Scrabble informed me that unfortunately we do not have mangrove stands. The alteration, disturbance, or encroachment of any dune as defined by this ordinance is prohibited. And the UDO defines dune as a naturally placed mound of earth or sand, vegetated or unvegetated, that can be independent or part of an incorporated system. The word dune shall include, and I'll just hit the highlights on this rather than describe each one of them, estuarine, frontal dunes, interior dunes, primary dunes. And that's included in UDO Article 11 under definitions. When I reviewed the permit applications for Porpoise Place, in addition to looking at the Unified Development Ordinance and the zoning ordinance to make sure that it was compliant, because it was a bit out of the box, I wanted to make sure that there weren't any other regulations or ordinances out there that it would be inconsistent with. And looked at the Camel Land Use Plan, which surprisingly did not address that. But the town in 2010 and 2015 amended the Sand Dune Protection Ordinance in the town code. This town code, even though it dealt or addressed development, was not reviewed and submitted up through the planning board to the Board of Aldermen. It was, because it was part of the town code, it was just strictly reviewed and approved by the Board of Aldermen. So in that, and I thought that there might surely be a prohibition in disturbing the dune in the Sand Dune Protection Ordinance. But in paragraph B, it says, except in the following locations, and then it goes on to list about 5 exemptions, which of course includes structures that are platted and whatnot. So that did not prohibit permitting either the house as a structure or the pool as a structure in the primary dune system. So pretty much clears it up for the pools. And I'll finish up with the report, and then we can go back and you can, I'll be more than glad to try to answer any questions that you have on that. We also discussed the proposed unencapsulated polystyrene ordinance that was initially submitted by BISEC, and Mayor Pro Tem Benson also did a presentation to the planning board, and staff's recommendation was to include in table 4-1 for the use table, with dock and pier as accessory and principal structure, to also include floating walkways, and then to include a use-specific standard in section 4.0, I think 03.23, that would say, that would state unencapsulated polystyrene as a floating device for floating dock systems, piers, and floating walkways is prohibited. And then also to include a statement in the Camel Land Use Plan as well, the use of
Recording in progress.
the use of unencapsulated polystyrene as a flotation device or floating dock systems, floating walkways, or floating structures used in aquaculture is prohibited for the use in coastal waters and marshes within the town of North Topsail Beach. And there was additionally, you can tell it was a busy night. Rogers Bay had submitted a text amendment application to allow for larger sheds. If you may or may not remember, several years ago they had requested the little Rubbermaid stand-up sheds, and those have not been sufficient for being able to keep all their chairs and equipment picked up. This request was also supported by the president of the Rogers Bay HOA, and the planning board's motion was storage sheds not in excess of 7 feet wide, 4 feet deep, and 8 feet 2 inches in height, properly anchored, shall not be in excess, shall not be placed adjacent to any roadway, and only one shed authorized per lot. And that was a unanimous recommendation on that. We also discussed the continued efforts for the unified development, for the UDO, for the code scan, incorporating the changes recommended by UNC School of Government. That's ongoing. The NC Resilient Coastal Communities Program, I've been working with Town Manager Kyle Brewer with Surf City and Christina with Topsail Beach. The deadline for that application is this Friday. And I had a request by, and I'd coincidentally also been working on Great Minds Think Alike, Dark Sky Ordinance. Been working with, and had discussed this with Alderman Plettle, and she had some recommendations. We currently in our development ordinance have a lighting ordinance for development plans like PUDs. We do not address an existing structure or existing lighting that would be blaring on the beach or blaring in someone's bedroom windows. So we're trying to bridge the gap between what we have for development and then what would constitute a nuisance, and most importantly, that would be enforceable. So typically in the past, Jones Onslow has really been good about working with us. They'll come in and they'll say, we have a request to put up this light, how would you like it? I didn't really have any guidance except for what we had for development. And so, I would request that the lights be shielded, that they not be, real high and have a large footprint, but basically confined, and still provide safety at night, with that being given certainly a consideration. And we've always been able to work that out in the past without any ordinance in place to guide us. So, at some point in time, after the dark sky ordinance and the grant gets submitted and the UDO gets scanned, I have on my list that I report to the planning board so they can kind of keep me honest and remind me of things that I need to be doing. And one of those items is the zoning map update, where we have all the past rezonings that were approved by the Board of Aldermen and have a clean map printed with all the current updates, have it dated and signed by the mayor and the town clerk. By ordinance, there's 3 copies. One, the official zoning map, official zoning map is kept in the town clerk's vault. And then I have a working copy, and we did have a working copy that we kept down here. But certainly make one available in the event that there was a Board of Aldermen or a planning board discussion that needed to have that third working map. And also, Stu Harness and Susan Meyer have applied for the vacant positions on the planning board and the Board of Adjustment vacancies, and so that's included in your, I think it's in the consent agenda, if I'm not mistaken, and I,
The applications, yeah.
yep. And I would certainly request that the board review those and approve both Susan Meyer and Stu Harness to fill those positions. And I know that there was some consternation with regards to why we had all these items that were on the planning board meeting for April the 12th, and why they're not, or, am I messing up my dates? May 12th, and why we're not scheduled for a public hearing to discuss them tonight. And North Carolina general statutes require that a notice be placed in the paper of general circulation no further out than 25 days, no sooner than 10 days. And I just could not meet Jacksonville Daily News schedule and the North Carolina general statutes requirements for getting that advertisement posted the Friday morning after the planning board had made their motions. It gets a little sketchy if I advertise something ahead of time in anticipation of what I think that they might make a motion on or might do. To be fair, the only thing we can do is schedule it for your July meeting, and all those items that I previously mentioned will be on the agenda for public hearing for your July meeting. I think that's it. Sorry to go on and on.
Okay, but thank you. Let's appreciate your report, Director Hill. Let's work from the bottom of the report back. So
Okay.
First, do I have a motion to appoint Susan Meyer and Stu Harness to the planning board? Alderman
Second. Swantek.
Sonntag, and second was
Second.
Alderman Grant. The reason we're saying this, it makes it a lot easier for the clerk taking notes if we have it
Right.
in our recording. Okay.
Right.
So all in favor, or discussion of the motion? All in favor of appointing those two? Aye. Those opposed, same side. It's unanimous. Okay, point of clarification.
And to put a bow on that, there are members that their terms are expiring or have expired. And so, and we're also moving individuals from alternates up to the actual voting membership. So there would be appointments to regular membership as well as reappointments for the ones that their terms are expiring. And so my request would be that you adopt the roster for the planning board members and the roster for the zoning board of adjustment members as presented in the consent agenda.
You can do that now, but just a note that it is on the consent agenda.
So we don't really have to.
Okay, that's good.
Unless somebody has an objection, we'll just, okay. All right, next on your report, Dark Sky Ordinance. Any questions about that portion of the report?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Deb, I want to thank you very much for working on that, and for anybody that doesn't know, I had suggestions that I did not quite know the protocol to how to submit them and stuff, so I want to apologize to you again for that. But thank you so much for you and the board working on that. I appreciate it.
There's no apology necessary. And I'm sorry if I was like this. I get a little excited when things are kind of not meshed in, and it is so understandable with board members that are passionate about different items of the town, and you're trying to fix things and to adopt an ordinance. But if that ordinance doesn't fit into what we have, and in particular, what's most sad, I think, is if we don't fine tune it to where that it's enforceable, then we can have all the great intent, just like with the sand dune ordinance that I mentioned earlier, that I'm sure that that was no one's intent when they passed that they felt like that was a very strict, or maybe common sense. It was a very good approach that they had, but not everything fits in a cookie cutter mold. So we're constantly having to go back and tweak for circumstances to try to address them. But I appreciate you working with me on that, and certainly we'll address both the development as well as the nuisance side of the house when that comes up to the planning board, and I appreciate that.
I just have
Any
one
other
quick question.
comments on the dark
Just
sky
a real
ordinance?
quick clarification. I understand it's hard to say, a new builds, it's easy to put lighting requirements in, right?
Right.
But is it possible for us, and you don't have to answer, there's something for the planning board to think about, is, are we able to put an ordinance in that says you gotta turn your lights off if there is certain, I mean, that's not taking I don't know what the rules are, but I also have the same concern when you see some of the lighting out there at night, now that we're in turtle season. It's hard for me to not see that as a nuisance, if you wanna call that, or whatever. So it doesn't have to be discussed today, but it's just something for you guys to think about.
I'll give you a quick answer on that, a quick response. One is the enforceability of it. When your zoning director is watching HBO out in Holly Ridge at 12 o'clock at night, and someone who wasn't really thinking or wasn't aware has these spotlights on, and so there needs to be, from my perspective, my recommendation, and what will work into this, is a public education component to, and certainly with the rentals and stuff. And we did this, I think, a couple of years ago, and we've not done it recently, is that they have like magnets on the refrigerators for the rentals that are available, and that say, like, you know, stay off the dune, turn off your porch lights, you know, all this stuff. So that might be something that we could really all agree and put our shoulder behind on the public education component. And then for the ones that are nuisances, then we'll let the ordinance handle that.
This might be a topic, because you're talking about public education as part of the beach clean initiative I'm going to talk about later in my Alderman's report, but also an island-wide initiative, not just North Topsail Beach. So possibly getting the Topsail Island Shoreline Protection Commission involved in this as an educational outreach, and working with the Turtle Hospital, because they get 30,000 visitors, so somewhere over there, a great place to educate people, because they're wanting to learn. Okay, any other questions about? Let's move up to B, the NC Resilience Coastal Communities Program. Any questions on that? I would like to compliment you, Director Hill, for all the time and effort you put into this. We got through phases 1 and 2, and now we're set up in phase 3 with a grant, as you mentioned, that's going to allow us to actually do a design, get an engineer to design on stormwater management. And hopefully then we move into the phase 4 section, we will be able to get some construction funds through grants. So you put a lot of effort into this, and you positioned us in a way that we're a leg up on other coastal communities that haven't gone through this resilience planning process that we have as a member of the 3 towns on Topsail Island. So thank you for that.
Yes, sir, thank you. And if I can just belabor that point just for a second, this isn't the end-all and be-all for this project. It's certainly a wonderful, welcome opportunity to be able to work with Surf City and Topsail Beach on a common problem or a common issue. But each of us submitted like 3 areas that we wanted to focus on, and kind of ran those by the town manager and public works director to identify those areas. But once we do those, that can be like a model on how we can address, once we have those engineered plans, how we can address other areas in the town, given the funding, to kind of spread that out. This will be like a little seed that we're planting, see how it works, and if it does great, then we can certainly duplicate it in other areas of the town.
Okay, well, thank you. We're ready to move up in the report to text amendment for Rogers Bay. Any comments on that? I think it's a good idea. They're trying to be consistent and structure the size that they can accommodate the stuff they have on their lots, so it's not so cluttered. All right. The next one is the unencapsulated polystyrene. Any comments on that? The only one comment I would have, Director Hill, is under the CAMA land use plan, where it says floating structures used in aquaculture. I kind of jumped the gun when I put that in the guidelines because CRC is still discussing whether or not they're going to approve floating structures for aquaculture. And I would imagine by the time that hopefully we pass this ban and other towns pass a ban on unencapsulated polystyrene, that the CRC will see the light and it will be part of the requirements for aquaculture structures. So I would just take out the words use in aquaculture for the CAMA land use plan.
We can certainly do that, or in the event that policies change down the road and you leave it in there, then that will always be the town standard.
Okay, well,
And we don't, that's one, and then the other part is that the town doesn't regulate aquaculture, so it's kind of a moot point, so I'll be glad to take it out.
okay, well, all right. Okay. All right, your next item is the ordinance on swimming pools.
Yeah.
Questions about your comments there? First, Alderman Swanton.
Just a clarification, when you say any dunes, you mean where the dune starts, doesn't matter if it's a frontal or a secondary,
Or primary,
or a primary, yeah.
right.
It doesn't matter, as long as
It-
it's the start of the dune.
It doesn't matter if it falls in that category, and it also included the estuarine dunes as well. So, once again, it's very difficult to lasso all, to be able to think about all future situations that we might run into, or that we create a hardship on someone by that language. But that's what the appeal process with Board of Adjustments is all about, having that little steam release that if it does cause a hardship. The other thing that I would like to mention, Division of Coastal Management, when people are putting in crossovers and gazebos, just by the nature of that work, there's going to be some dune disturbance, of course. And so, but Division of Coastal Management allows them to put the structure in or do whatever work, but then they've got to go back and fix that dune. And so my recommendation is to let that be on the onus of the inspector, to where that if they don't go back and fix it, one, it should be noted that there was dune disturbance and they have, a few days, whatever it is, to, get that patch back up. But then if they don't, that they're issued a notice of violation for dune disturbance based on that section.
And my second part of my question is, how did we didn't allow it, CAMA allowed it. They're not allowing them to put structures up there right now, going over the dune. But yet they let them go through the dune, disturbed all that dune, and then there's a big clip anyway.
Right. The original plan that was submitted to me by the engineer was that the pool actually go into the side of that dune. And when I saw that, to me it was counterintuitive, and it was like, that's not going to work when you're putting it inside of dune and then you have a structure that it's clearly, above grade and not consistent with the flood ordinance. And so I denied that. And so it's, at the same time that both Ralph and I have to enforce building code on his side, flood and zoning on my side, and the CAMA land use on my side, I have an equal obligation to work with property owners to develop their property to the highest and best use within those regulations. So CAMA did allow, because of and I still try to wrap my head around it, and I will be honest with you, I lack that expertise of how you allow for that pool to be on top of the dune and so when CAMA approved that part, then I went back and forth with NFIP to make sure that it was consistent with the flood part, because I'm not the permitting authority on the camera permit. So, you know, I think it gives us it certainly gives us an opportunity to take a look at our ordinance and to review the language and also be able to revise it and still allow for development that is consistent with the desire of the town.
The problem, I'm not talking about the pool, I'm talking about the walkway that goes out to the ocean. They cut right through the dune. And they said, and from what I'm understanding and what I've heard, Camel let them do it.
I have not seen that, so I can't, you know.
I'm talking primary dune. And they put a walkway to it.
There's a picture of it, there's
There's pictures of it, yeah.
Yeah.
But let's stick to our topic of swimming pools right now.
Yeah.
That's a different issue, Bob.
I will take a look at that and discuss it with Division of Coastal Management to make sure that, to ensure that it is consistent with our camera permit.
But it's one other thing, when there's a walkway, one house down, prior, you know, over to the beach, just didn't make any sense.
Just as a side note, I have forwarded what you had asked to CAMA for confirmation, but they did receive a permit to put the post and rope in up to the dune. So they did receive a CAMA permit for that. We had since took pictures and sent to CAMA for interpretation that they are in fact within their permit requirements. So they will be familiar with the issue when we touch base with them.
Okay, Alderman Grant?
Just real quick on that, that would actually be something for, one of the things that you brought up today, and I appreciate it, was the under 1049, that B section, where it's got the, you can't do it except.
Yes, sir.
So as we're looking, as you've already pointed out, you're gonna go back and take a look at that and say, I gotta make sure that there isn't a loophole here, where all of a sudden I can put something else in there by I fall into the or else category around it. And just a clarification, and you've already done this with me, but I just want to get on the record, is that when we're looking at the new language, and I really applaud the work of the planning board in getting this done, is we talk about not disturbing the dunes. Specifically, putting on my legal hat here, is that doesn't mean you can alter them and put it back. It means you cannot alter them ab initio from the beginning. You can't cut it, put it back, and say, oh, I fixed it.
Right.
So our intent is you cannot disturb the dune to put it in. And I think that going back to, I know you're gonna handle this separately, going back to Bob's comment about them cutting a place to go through there, we need to make sure that that regulation applies to disturbing the dune. It's one thing to put rope and
Right.
up. It's another thing to say, I'm cutting a path to get to the rope and post. So if you would look at that, I thought that was good. I like the language that you've got here. And you already described for me the 18 inches above grade.
Yes, sir.
Which makes sense to me because you can't really have a deck if that's not the case.
Yes, sir.
So, thanks again. I think you guys did a great job, and I appreciate the work you did on it, Beth.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Any other comments on? All right, I have some comments. And my comments, I'm going to basically read a statement, and I don't expect any answers at this point. It's going to be questions for the planning board to consider at your next meeting as you're developing the next step in this process, okay? So I'm just going to go through a litany of things that I've thought about and I've looked into to try to understand exactly why we would be changing our ordinances the way it currently is written, and that meets CAMA guidelines. So here we go. So is this ordinance or amendment going to be about swimming pool placement or protecting the dunes? I think that's the first question you've got to ask yourself. Excuse me. And if it's about protecting the dunes, then swimming pools are only one aspect about this. So putting a structure to access the ocean, like the posts we were just talking about, those posts would disturb the dune. And if you put a walkway on those posts, shading from the walkway would disturb the kinds of beach grasses are there because they are sunny beach grasses, not shady beach grasses. So you would, in a sense, be degrading the environment of the dune. So that's why I'm asking, are we talking about swimming pools, or are we talking about structures in the dune? Okay, so I would say, from my research, that the first 4 or 5 houses in Dolphin Shores to the north, towards the inlet, the whole house is in the dune. By the definition of dune that I have found, the whole house, not just putting a swimming pool in a dune, the whole house was built in a dune. The driveways, those houses go uphill. To me, that's a dune, okay? So we need to think about what we're doing here, okay? So what were the pros and cons about banning pools particularly? Have there been a lot of noise complaints? Loud parties? Is that one reason? Did the planning board discuss really the pros and cons of why we're going down this proposed text amendment? Okay? As I attended that planning board meeting to talk about the unencapsulated polystyrene, I heard a discussion on the pools. And I did not hear any pro and con discussion on why we're even considering changing the ordinance, Do pools cause environmental damage? I've already said the point I had about putting any kind of structure in the dune, okay? Is it thought that a con could be, well, maybe if we had a really bad storm, that pool would float out of the ground and hit the house and cause damage to the house, and the pool fiberglass would break apart, and we'd have all kinds of fiberglass debris over in the marsh. 300 tons of debris were removed from the marsh by the Coastal Federation, so that would be a con concern if that could be an issue. I'm assuming that in your statement, all pools, spas, and hot tub applications require a V-zone certification by design. That would mean that the pool really wouldn't be coming out of the ground, but I don't know what that means because I don't understand the V-zone certification, but just something for the planning board to think about. All right. Now, back to the definition of what a dune is. Spencer Rogers, in his book, The Dune book, describes a dune. I'm going to read what his definition is. We take attempts to define a dune for regulatory purposes are quite difficult. In this booklet, we take the broadest views. Dunes are defined as any area landward of an active beach where dune grasses are a dominant plant. All right, that's a pretty wide definition. But if you look at the physical analysis that the CRC did back in 2018, Tancred Miller did this as the Coastal Ocean Policy Manager. The excerpt from that analysis: frontal dunes are defined as the first mound of sand located landward of the ocean beach that has stable natural vegetation. Primary dunes are the first mounds of sand located landward of the beaches, having elevation equal to, so forth and so on. Now, Deb, in your report, you described several different types of dunes, so maybe you also need to consider in the Cameron Land Use Plan the definitions of dunes that would maybe coincide either with Spencer Rogers' definition or what the CRC.
I imagine that that's where the definitions are taken from. Whenever I read through those real quick, I said I wasn't going to go into each one of them, but in the ordinance, certainly each one of those 4 that I described are more fully described in the definition under dunes.
Okay, all right. Well,
And I will say that in the UDO's definition, where Spencer Rogers says vegetated, in the UDO that was adopted, it's vegetated or unvegetated.
okay.
So I think that our ordinance, Spencer's looking at it at a broader statewide view, whereas with what we've come up with is more towards the local regulations and how the town wants to enforce its ordinances.
Okay, so there's a question about what we're talking about here in terms of we protecting dunes or we protecting the environments by not allowing any structures in the dunes. That's something for the planning board to go back through and consider in discussions. In the mangrove stands, you've made a comment that I didn't quite hear in your report, that you changed that term.
After the coastal scientist Tracy Scrable,
Yeah.
I have to say it slowly because I have a problem with SKRA, long A. I want to say Scrabble, Scrable. Stayed for the entire presentation, as you know, and you were there. And then after the presentation, when we were going back and forth in emails, she had said, "Oh, by the way, I don't mean to get into your knickers, but you don't have any mangroves." And I said, "No, I appreciate that," because I had questioned that when I had first gotten here, having lived in Florida for a short period of time. I didn't really see, when I was first, came LPO for the town, I didn't really see anything that I thought were mangroves per se. And so I was glad that she brought that up, that we don't have mangroves. So we need to look at the terminology, and if we do have a tree protection ordinance, but it
Well,
might be
yeah.
something that we
Well,
use the language with the
yeah.
live oak groves.
See, and to me, that kind of threw up another red herring, because you're right. Well, there are like 4 species of trees that make up mangroves, and the red mangrove is the only species that occurs in North Carolina, and it would grow as single plants here and there. We really don't have stands, what you would call mangroves. But I was assuming that you were talking about on the sound side of the island. So now I'm thinking, now we're not going to have swimming pools on the sound side of the island. So by having that word mangroves in there, you're implying that we're banning swimming pools in the whole town, not just in the dune. Okay, so that was a red flag for me.
Right.
I think you got that one squared away. Okay. So here are my final comments. From your research, how many towns have set stricter guidelines for pools than those imposed by CAMA? How many UDOs does NTB have that are stricter than the CAMA rules? Why are you proposing stricter rules than those set by CAMA when the CRC has spent a great deal of time and effort to protect the environment by conducting their dune analysis and adopting their rules to say where you can and cannot put a swimming pool, for example? I think if we have a more stricter guideline, we're going to be exposing ourselves possible to legal interpretation and possible costs down the road in terms of defending our stricter guidelines. So that's something else for the planning board to consider when you go back through this effort. So I think we all want to protect the environment, no doubt about that. But I would like you, the planning board, to discuss some of these points to be sure that we're not getting into a situation that's going to be more of a problem than a cure. I have these comments. I will send them to the chair of the planning board, to you, and I'll also send them to all the aldermen in case you have additional items you would like to add to the list for the planning board to consider at their next meeting as they develop their text amendment. Thank you.
Can I just add one other comment? I think our lawyer's going to do it again, and I am playing lawyer on this. I have no problem at all with considering the legal ramifications of doing something, particularly, if it's, I think that's something we need to consider. But on the flip side of that, if you take the position, I never want to do anything because I might get sued, then you never end up doing anything. And so I think I'm very concerned about taking somebody's property rights away retroactively, changing a regulation. You could have everything from, well, why did you change your parking regulations? I don't want that. Why did you do those type of things? So I think I'm glad that the planning group would take a look at it, but I think that's a balancing act to me. And having talked to other towns about it, one particularly on the island, his take was sometimes you got to spend money to protect the town, and I think in this particular one they did. It took them a while, and they were upheld in court. So I would leave those discussions to Brian, but I don't want to leave the impression that just because somebody might sue us over something is a reason not to do the right thing, which I don't think is what you're saying.
And I do agree with that, and also to Mayor Pro Tem Benson's point, it is certainly easier from an enforcement perspective to be consistent with the CAMA regs. However, we can be more restrictive. The key to that is to have plain language, easy to understand definitions. Yep. The more discretion you vest with the person reading the definition for enforcement purposes, the more likely you're susceptible to a legal challenge.
Can I just add on that? From a practicality standpoint, I don't have a law degree, sadly. My next life, I'm going to Chapel Hill. But in this life, I don't have a law degree, and I don't think that any of my planning board members have a law degree. And so they are responding to the routine business of government coming up, as well as direction that you, the board, have given them. And so with the town attorney's time being as limited as what it is, then I would request that any quote-unquote legal issues be addressed by the town attorney when presented to the Board of Aldermen.
Exactly, so you can.
And take that off of the planning board.
You can strike through that comment in my comments.
Great, thank you, sir.
All right. Clerk, did anyone sign up for the open forum, or do we have any written comments that were sent by email?
I have not received any written comments.
Okay.
And there's no one signed up for the public forum.
All righty, let's move on then to public presentations and hearings. We're ready for the coastal engineering report by Mr. Franway, ATM. Are you still there, Fran? That's us, so. That's not Fran. Fran, is Fran's microphone on? There it is. Morning, Fran.
Morning.
We're ready for your coastal update.
Okay, sure. Do you want me to share my screen?
Yes, please.
Okay. So here's the update for June. This is just an overview of the North Topsail Beach oceanfront shoreline from New River Inlet up to phase 1 down to phase 5 at the Surf City town limit. Several projects still kind of going on. The phase 1 project, that the permitting is being finalized, and then the town has that grant, or it's not a grant, it's the funding that I'm sure Alice has mentioned. And then the phase 5 project, and then, then there's some dune projects here and there, work, in phases 2 through 4. And then the New River Inlet Management Plan, up here, we're, working on the EIS that was developed, back 12 or 13 years ago, and trying to update that for terminal growing and other alternatives. Here's that area up near the Topsail Villas in phase 1, and this is going to be a beach project, not a dune project. And this is in between the Cobra Zone starts just down, just to the southwest of Topsail Villas, and whilst the inlet hazard area, the current inlet hazard area, starts just to the northeast of there. This area, this project is still, the permitting is being finalized. Basically, I was assured that the that both the state and the Army Corps of Engineers, this has gone through all of the necessary permitting and review, and they're just finalizing the permit. And it will be pretty much a standard permit from November 16th. And actually, but since we're so close to the inlet hazard area, we do have to work, the month of April is kind of a shorebird nesting area for inlet hazard areas, and so there are a few more permit conditions for that. For the Phase 5 truck haul, they placed, about 120,000 cubic yards of material. They went about 4,000 feet, and, everything kind of went as according to plan. They still have, about, 170,000 cubic yards of material to go, and they still, have, it's about 7,000 feet. And then, obviously, beyond that, we're going to, start bidding out the second 300,000 cubic yards of that project that will follow this one. And this one will begin, November 16th. We did look for extensions into May for this project, and this project could have happened, but the ST route and just the level of beach traffic and just the vehicle traffic along the islands and in between the upland sand mine and the project site, it was starting to affect productivity and all just the beach goers, and so we were working on an extension, and then ST Wood decided not to do it. And even without that extension, they still placed what we were hoping. Here's just a couple images of it. The material's really good color, really good consistency. Nowadays, regulatory people are here. They're visiting the beach. They're making sure that there's not rocks on the beach or any kind of too much shell, or and then they also want to consider compaction and where we have to till. This material was really good. Obviously, it didn't have any issues with rock. It didn't have any issues with shell. And the compaction was they tested the compaction, and they felt it was good and it didn't need tilling. And that's unusual. They are required tilling a little bit more nowadays. So it was good, and the regulators, from what I'm talking, they're really happy with this material as well. This was the Onslow County beach access, and I missed the manager's update, but this was a strange little project. The DCM/CAMA staff were saying there was some back and forth in April, and everything seemed to be okay, and then they wanted some additional coordination with the county, and then they came back, in May 4 and said, we can't, this is not FEMA funding, and I won't get into this that much, but I'm sure Alice probably did. Then we did submit, I talked with the Wildlife Resources Commission woman, who she was the one who was, and we worked with Brian Needs, and he kind of, made some calls. It's just, I'm not sure. But so this project, we want to do the full project, and I guess this project will have to happen in November. And we can discuss that, anytime soon. So just the summary: the Beach 5 Nourishment will start up again on November 16th. The Phase 1 project, we will, that is also scheduled, that Topsail Village project, that is scheduled to occur in, this fall, this November, December window. We will have to coordinate with the Army Corps of Engineers, where the Army Corps of Engineers is going to put sand up in that area. And this is, pretty typical, where they're going to put sand. Their bidding is in July, and then they'll get their results in August, so we won't really hear about scheduling from the Army Corps of Engineers dredge project, probably until, September. And, obviously, those projects that they award, they usually, bundle them, several projects, and then it's kind of up to the contractor where he wants to start and where the list of projects is. So we're not sure whether, North Topsail Beach will be at the front of that list or at the back of that list in terms of working in that window. Well, we'll just continue to coordinate with them on that. The New River Inlet Management Master Plan, we're continuing on working with the dock board. He has requested, information on getting it back to them. And Nikki has, appears to be, working on it a little bit. I'm not sure if Nikki has, replaced Jordan, who was his kind of second in command, and trying to work this up. You can make sure that Nikki is getting the help he needs within the Corps. For the finance, I'll be continuing to work with, the finance officer, Caitlin, and DEC Associates regarding and kind of the funding and that second phase 5 project. And that meeting will occur this summer. And CO planting, the town, the CO planting is ongoing, and they will have teams out there, and the teams it'll be several months until it's a big project. But they are going all phases, with phases 1 through 4 and then 5. They're doing more near the pier right now. But they are hitting all those areas. And permitting coordination, we're continuing to coordinate with the DCM/CAMA staff and the Army Corps of Engineers staff on all the projects. The county beach access I just spoke with. And then the other thing that I'm sure maybe Alice or Alderman Benson have talked about was that the state grant that did come out lately that has 18 million in funding. And I do think that the town should look into that. And I can assist in any way I possible. We can discuss that further.
We're gonna pause just for a minute, Fran. We got military traffic overhead and we can't hear you very well. Okay. Questions? Alderman Grant?
You knew I was going to have questions. One of the things that I think that is critical is that we do not repeat what happened last year about starting late. One of the things I would ask the town manager to do is require yourself and Mr. Carter to come up with a Gantt chart that shows what backdated, and say if we're going to start our work on November 16th, when do I have to have my permits in place? When do I have to have my SOBs in place? I'm sure that Alice is already working on that, but I think it's critical that our vendors come back and so that we do not lose any days going forward, because we have got so much sand going in phase 5 in particular that we need to get done. And I think that Alice is also going to, well, it doesn't directly relate to that. I'm assuming with the SOBs and stuff, we have to take in special obligation bonds as listing. That we still have some money outstanding from Fema reimbursement-wise, what our cash position is and all those type of things, so that that the manager, when she's putting together her plan on this thing, can show us that our vendors have come to her and said, we've got this locked up, and obviously a nice little cushion in there, contingency, in terms of getting that done, because I think we've got, and I think to Mike's point before, we've got so much sand that's going to hit the town in the next 9 months, and assuming that we have any kind of weather issues, it's critical that we get started as soon as we can. So, end of my lecture, and I would kick it to towns.
Yeah, I would just second those comments on the grant. And is there really any company that has the capacity to haul 500,000 cubic yards of sand in the 4 or 5 months, the window we're going to have starting November 16th? Is that going to be an issue getting bids for this next phase of the project?
They were doing about, they were doing about, 60,000 cubic yards a month. And so 5 months, that's, 300,000 cubic yards. So it does look like, it will be, I think we can get, you know, a significant amount of material and then maybe another month. But based on what maybe we could get, you know, maybe more like 75,000 or possibly 100,000 cubic yards a month. But that's gonna be tough.
I mean, could you have more than one drop-off site and like two sets of off-road trucks working from two different sites to, as long as they could get the delivery of the sand there? I mean, we have about 500,000 cubic yards to go, isn't that correct, Fran?
Just in 5.
Yes.
Phase 5?
Yep.
Okay, so I think it's gonna be very important to get this coordinated well ahead of time, where we're gonna be into another year of truck haul if we can't get it going on time at the volume we need.
Can I follow up on one comment that you made too, is I understand it when I asked the question before about whether instead of putting it all down at one time, we could put it a thinner layer down so that everybody gets some of that, and I was told you couldn't do that because of the permit. So what I would ask is, if we're looking at this, let's just say I'm in phase 5 and I have no sand right now, okay, and I look at it and I say, okay, we can adopt the permit, so if we can only get 350 in, all right, is that an option? I would ask that our beach engineers look at that as to whether that's a viable option or not, because now I'm sitting in phase 5 and now it's been 3 years since I haven't had sand on, versus if you give me, and Mr. Swantek lives in 5, I'd like to hear his comments on this, I'd rather get some of it now, all right? Because also, as I understand FEMA regulations, knock on wood, if we have another storm come in, it's based upon the sand that was already down there, right? And so we don't want to, I just think that we've talked about this thing, we started late last time because of permitting and everything else. I think that Mike has made some excellent comments about isn't this an awful lot of sand to go down there, and should we split contract or whatever. I think all that needs to look at, but I would also look at, if it's possible, to have a plan that says that everybody that hasn't gotten sand so far gets something. And then if we have another 20% that's got to go back in next year, that's a completely different thing to me if I live in that area than getting nothing again. So anyway, let's throw that out.
Any other questions for the coast engineer?
Just a comment on the timeframe. Of course, we're gonna be meeting over the next week, scheduling a meeting between all of us to just nail down the dates as far as timing goes, because we'll need to award bids in September. And then, of course, after that, get LGC approval in October for us to be able to begin in November. So all that's going to be pre-planned over the next week. And then Fran, of course, could work on, as Mr. Grant said, about the inner workings of the contract and the scope of work as to where they need to start.
Okay.
And that can all come following that.
Okay.
We
Good.
do have, I know you asked too about Fema reimbursement. On average, it's been taking about 3 to 6 months to get reimbursed right now. We have 1.28 million outstanding for the Cat G right now. We're a month into it. And then 1.46 million for the Cat B, which is from Dorian and Florence.
Okay.
And we're 3 months into that.
So current status on this, on the SOB is we're still, because the way that works, right, as we get reimbursed, it gets paid against the outstanding note. So we still have probably 5 or 6 that we've paid off.
Correct.
All right, so we've got that, and so then we run in the fall. I don't remember how that works, if that's specific or not. Maybe at the next thing you could give us an update on that. Because I think Mr. Carter's gonna have to give us an update on interest rates. I have a hard time believing we're gonna borrow the money at south of 2 again, but hopefully we will. That'd just be a good thing for our next meeting. Thank you. Thanks, Bob.
Okay. Thank you, Fran. Appreciate it.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Our next item is the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll motion to accept the consent agenda.
Thank you, Alderman Plettle. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Alderman Swantek. Is there any discussion of the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. It's unanimous. Okay. Continuing business. Our first item is the Beach Inlet Sound Advisory Committee report. And I've lost my place on my computer. The committee met on May 24th. In the report, you will see the manager's update, which I won't go through. Much of that is covered in the current manager's report. We did talk about the NC Byways meeting, that some of the highlights for the members of our committee that to know what was going on there. Most of these members have not been to a meeting like that before, but we informed them that now that they are representing the town for Beach Inlet and Sound Advisory, they will be replacing aldermen that normally go to the Byways meeting, and will be traveling because of the these kind of meetings are just the interpersonal interaction that happens. It's, you know, you got to be there to get the full benefit of that conference. So good thing. We talked about the 30-year beach management plan, and we had really a pretty, I don't want to call it historic, but I want to say that we're making some serious progress with this committee in a very short period of time since its formation. So our recommendation to the board is that the board direct the BISAC committee to begin initial scoping work needed for an engineered beach management plan, with consultant costs be covered by funds set aside in the proposed budget of 222-223 for Fund 30, and that we explore funding opportunities to cover the town cost in this. Now, what's important about having a beach management plan, an engineered beach management plan? Here's one big difference we learned from our advisor. All the projects that we've been doing over the years, phase 1, phase 2, phase 5, I mean, Fran just went through all of them. Each one has to have a separate permit, and you have to go back through the whole rigmarole of all the documentation, environmental, everything, for each of those projects, each time. And each time it takes a long time for the permits to be issued. By having an engineered beach plan for all 11 miles of our shoreline, then different projects come up. The basic information that the regulators need is there. And so it smooths the process. It makes it a lot easier time-wise to get permits issued. We don't have to keep going back over and over the same thing. And so it's very important to have an engineered beach plan. So the committee is going to be working towards that, and we're asking the board to allow us to use the funds that we're going to put in the budget to cover the cost of developing this plan, because it's estimated to be somewhere around $150,000 over probably a 3 or 4 year period to get the plan completed. So a little bit each year. I don't know, should we do a motion on each of these recommendations, or should we just wait?
Let me just add one thing that Mike, I think because of looking at the notes, with the BISAC committee, one of the things we noted is, and I think he'll be talking about in a minute, is applying for a grant that's going to be, we're applying for, and it's got to be by July, I believe, that she's got it, and you can use that grant funds to do the beach engineering. Okay, that can be included in what we do. So the cost of the town, we're hoping that we'll get that grant, and engineering services are included in what you can ask for into that grant. So that was a real breakthrough for us in that meeting too, Mike.
Exactly, that was exactly. Because had we not had that coastal engineer there to explain how we could utilize funds that we've already qualified for to cover the town's expenses to the state and this new coastal, it's not new, the Coastal Storm Damage Mitigation Fund. It's a no-brainer not to apply for it. Now, there's only $18 million, and there's a lot of coastal communities, there's gonna be a lot of applications submitted, but, you don't know until you try. Okay, so, really, what should we do in terms of recommendation for expanding the money to develop the engineer's plan? Do we need a motion? Do the board need to approve that, or do you want to approve? How do we handle this?
Is it are you just appropriating money?
Yeah.
The money
Next year's
is
budget.
right-
It's
currently the-
allocated in next year's fiscal year budget right now.
It is.
Yeah.
It already is.
So we approve the budget, it will be approved.
Once we approve the money, the budget, the money's there.
And so what do you want to do in addition to having that as
I think
money?
just have a
The board has
consensus.
to tell the committee to go ahead. The committee can't go ahead and spend funds without board approval.
But that'll happen during the budget approval process.
Will they start spending money next fiscal year?
Next July.
As long as it'll be after the budget's passed, I don't think we need to do anything at this
Yeah.
point.
Right.
I mean, okay,
Say it again.
there's our expert.
You don't need to,
It's a consensus thing, right?
right, and it'll be in next year's budget. You don't have the BISAC committee meeting until
Well, we
the
do
end
have-
of the month.
We have one at the end of the month.
Right.
But we're not gonna
But you're
spend any,
not-
no, we're
you're
not
not
gonna be
expending
spending
any
any
funds
money
at
for
this
several
point.
months.
Right. Yeah, I think as long as you're not gonna spend any money this fiscal year,
And we're okay.
and you pass a budget that has it budgeted for next fiscal year, I don't even think you need to take any action.
Yeah, the intent was not to spend any money this fiscal
No.
year.
Okay,
Okay.
all right. Do we want to, I'm still confused, do we want to accept the committee's report so that we can?
I think you just asked for a consensus. I mean, obviously Mike and I are on the committee, so we agree with it.
Okay, all right, so we got a consensus to accept the report. Let's move on to Park and Recreation update, Alderman Lettle.
All right, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Benson. The Parks and Recreation Committee met on May 17th. We had in attendance our 2 official committee members and 1 person in the audience, as well as Bob and myself. At the meeting, the committee voted not to recommend the October Music Festival for several factors, but mainly due to the planning time limitations for the event, which may be a moot point if it's being moved to April. So the committee had thought that it was be looking to April for such an event, and maybe even smaller and local, but this may all come together very well. Meanwhile, we're moving forward on continuing to work on the nuts and bolts of the program and getting things off the ground. To that end, I have an appointment to meet with Caitlin White of Onslow County Parks and Recreation. I've also spoken to Jody Paget Shepherd of Surf City Parks and Rec, and we are also meeting. Several people have reached out and said they'd like to help with the committee. I'm encouraging them to attend our event, or our next meeting, and the next meeting will be held on June 21st at 6:30 p.m. here at the Town Hall. I invite everyone and anyone to attend. Any questions? Oh, Bob, do you have anything you wanted to say? All right. All right. That's it.
Okay, thanks. Any questions or comments? All right, our next item was added to the agenda, the offer to purchase the town lots on Folkestone. And I guess I should turn that over to the town manager to describe what you have on that.
The board approved at a previous meeting that we listed the lots on Folkestone Road that the town owns for sale. Yesterday, we have received a full price offer on those lots. So I'm just looking for board approval to execute those contract documents for the sale of the property for the full price amount provided, and for $125,000.
I believe we have to go through the upset bid process.
So like 30 days or
It's
something?
10.
10 days?
Right. So it would be to, and Alex, I'm sorry, we talked about this morning and it slipped my mind, but the vote would be to,
It's on.
the vote,
Just on,
it would be to approve that you're approving, you're announcing to the public that you intend to accept that offer subject to the 10-day upset bid process.
That's the
And,
motion you want?
yes, and as I apologize, we talked about that this morning, it completely skipped my
That's
mind.
fine.
So yes, like a motion to move forward with that offer and go through the statutory required upset bid process.
all right, would someone like to officially make that motion?
I would move that we accept the offer and direct the manager to move forward and comply with the statutory requirements, including any upset.
It's not technically accepted, as you know. 'cause
Right,
the
except
constraint-
it's subject to
It's-
nothing.
I would say that the board considers the offer acceptable to the point you're directing staff to move forward with the upset bid process. Because you can reject
That's
that
fine.
offer or any
Yes.
upset bid offers at any time you want until you vote to accept it.
Just exactly what Brian said. There's-
Thank you, Alderman
And
Swansack,
again-
for a second.
And
All,
and Alice asked me about, or town manager, Darren asked me about that this morning, and I apologize for not bringing that up.
all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign, it's unanimous. All right, we're ready for new business, temporary emergency operations center, town manager Durian.
Yes. Included in your agenda packet is a interlocal agreement with Onslow County. This is for the creation of a temporary emergency operations center, should we need one. The agreement essentially provides for North Topsail Beach to be permitted use of the designated areas of Coastal Elementary School and parking areas upon the request by the manager, the town manager, or the mayor, in the event of opening an EOC and/or staging area to respond to federal, state, or even a locally declared emergency. So we're looking for a motion to approve that interlocal agreement with Onslow County.
Is there a motion?
I would move to approve. I'm assuming this is pretty standard. Have we had these in the past?
Yes.
I thought so. Second.
All right, Alderman Grant made the motion, Alderman Hart seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do we want to have a little discussion?
Sure,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Which means
That
Connie wants
person
to have a
motion.
little discussion. So this would mean that we are not using the hotel.
This
Off the-
means that this is an option.
This is an option.
It's an option.
All right. I think it's a good option. I just wanted to ask the question. And we have done it in the past. We used to have an emergency operations center at the other elementary school. This one is the newer one that's over on Folkestone Road.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it should be state of the art.
It is, if you have been in there, it is a really nice.
It is. Okay. All right, so we did have the vote, all in favor again?
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign, so it's unanimous? Okay. The next item is the RFP for the 2022-001 Disaster Debris Clearance and Removal Services Contract.
Yes, RFP was issued for those services. Bids were received on May 25th for the services. Relevant staff has reviewed those proposals. This is an on-call contract that would be activated in case of a man-made or natural disaster that will require a large-scale debris cleanup within the town. Staff recommends that this contract be awarded to Crowder Golf at this time, so I'm looking for a motion. It's on-call, so it's broken out as far as labor for whether it's debris management, site management, tree cutting, everything's broken out individually.
Any fixed fee at the beginning of it?
No.
Or it's just as
Well,
needed?
let's have a motion.
So it's
and
just
we can
as
ask
needed?
questions.
Okay. I would move that we approve it.
Let's have a motion. Okay,
And
discussion.
these contracts are required So in the event that you do have to activate an EOC and you have a large scale event and you have to activate the contracts, then you are eligible for FEMA funds for the cleanup for those amounts. So it's just going through the process to be reimbursed for those costs.
Any other discussion? Call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. It's unanimous. Okay, we're down to item C, the RFP for disaster debris monitoring.
Yes.
Okay.
So this is the other one related to the disaster debris management services. This one is for monitoring. Due to only receiving one bid submission, I've reposted the solicitation and extended that out to June 10th. FEMA eligibility requirements, I suggest you have 2 bids. So the decision was made to repost that to extend the period up until June 10th. Again, it's an ongoing contract that would be activated along with the other contract that you just approved with Crowder Golf. The purpose of this one is to monitor and ensure compliance with the disaster debris removal process. Right now, I'm requesting a motion because we only received one bid, extended the posting. Looking for a motion to authorize staff to award a contract to the most responsive and responsible bidder as determined by the town manager and town attorney. This will also be ratified on the consent agenda for July.
Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Thank you. Alderman Little, a second?
Second.
Thank you. Alderman Hart, all in favor?
Just,
No discussion, I'm sorry.
just a real quick question. Brian, if we don't get 2 bids on the second one, we're okay?
Should be
Okay, that's all I want to know.
We made the effort, right?
Right, that's what I was asking. Perfect. Okay.
Any other
Aye.
questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. It's unanimous.
We just keep going back again.
Next time is open forum, and unless we got an email real quick since the beginning of the meeting, we don't have any comments there. Attorney's report.
No report. Again, I'm sorry that if we didn't get the county access work finished. I'm thankful that the county has agreed to, I don't know what the technical term is, they're going to roll that money over to next year. And again, I commend Alice's Herculean efforts to try to get it done this season. That's my report. Thank you.
All right, let's do the Alderman's report. We'll start with Alderman Plettle, if you don't mind.
All right, thank you very much. I thank everybody for attending, either virtually or in person. We had a busy holiday weekend, and the police and fire did an outstanding job. Somebody said earlier, I think it was Alderman Grant, that public safety is got to be our #1 issue, and boy, they do a good job. Thank you so much. As you know, it's a sea turtle nesting season, and we're a sea turtle sanctuary. As of today, Topsail Island now has 11 sea turtle nests, 8 of which are here in North Topsail Beach. And I really want to thank the Beach Patrol has been out there, and they were really good with the turtle project this weekend, as was Public Works. There were a couple of Public Work guys out there that came over and talked to us and took our cards. Everybody was really great. Quick reminder, please keep your oceanfront lights off and close your oceanfront blinds. I urge everybody to attend the budget meeting next Wednesday at 1 p.m. and also the Parks and Rec meeting on the 21st at 6:30 p.m.
Thanks to everybody that came, whether you had to or not. And we appreciate the firemen and the police department very much. Thank you.
All right, I'll defer. Go ahead, Alderman Swanbeck.
I'd just like to thank the police department. They did a great job, especially going out and trying to find that kid. And that was kind of a scary situation. And I appreciate them going down there with the 4-wheel drives. That is, I know there's a bunch from the base that it's a club, but they think they own the place when they go out there and they tear it up. And you know, I appreciate you guys doing what you do.
Just real briefly, again, thanks, great job. Also wanted to compliment Mr. Benson on the idea, the original idea for the BISAC committee, because I felt like, especially with Mr. Gibson's help there, and all the things that we've done between the Psalms with Carter and everything else, I know that Mike and I felt very good coming out of that meeting, because you got some people that are ready to go on this type of thing. And to me, and it goes back to the waterways, everything else, there's so much money out there for us, and we talk about applying for those grants and stuff like that, that it made me feel good, and I think the people in the committee are really making the effort. So again, thanks for coming, and have a great 4th of July.
All right, thank you, Alderman. My report, attended the NC Byways meeting back at the beginning of the month, along with several of the other members of the board. It was really a very productive meeting for us. Like I said in the BISAC report, hope to get the BISAC committee members going to that committee, that conference as well. One thing that we picked up over there literally was a water level sensor that we are hoping to purchase here that will help citizens know when we're going to have sound side flooding and property and streets. Once we get that thing installed, it will allow you to get it calibrated. So that was a pretty good find, and with that alone, it will help the citizens in the town. The Topsail and Shoreline Protection Commission meeting met last week or so, and we've already talked with Planning Director's Hill report on the Resilient Coastal Communities Program and the grant we're going to get. Another item from the Shoreline Protection Commission meeting is an initiative called Beach Clean. We're working on the final stages of having a web presence for the Beach Clean initiative. We're going to launch that hopefully before July the 4th. We hope to have an exhibit at the Turtle Hospital, because I mentioned earlier this morning that they have like 30,000 visitors a year, so it's a great place to educate the public. So we're looking forward to getting that going. The commission will have our Washington, D.C. virtual meeting come on June the 7th, so that we will be able to speak to our congressional delegation and to other government agencies in Washington about our needs. That's a virtual meeting. And then finally, I attended the virtual meeting of the School of Government Ethics class that all elected officials are required to attend. Alderman Hart did mention in his report that he also attended that, and it was actually a pretty good workshop. So that concludes my report. All right, the next item is, do I have a motion to go in closed session? All right, state grounds. So we'll take a minute and go into closed session.
Consult the town attorney.
Consult with an attorney employed or retained by the public body in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege between the attorney and the public body, which is privileged here by acknowledged General Statute 143.381.11, Prince A, Prince 3.
Okay, Alderman Grant in second. Alderman Swantek. So we'll take a break till we can get into closed session. Okay, we've come out of closed session. No action was taken during closed session. The next item on the agenda, I believe, is adjournment. And do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor? Meeting adjourned.
Nice job, Mike.